welcome to the program. In a worldwide television exclusive, you're about to meet a man I think is the luckiest man in the world. His name is Tracy Edwards, and he seemed doomed to become Jeffrey Dahmer's 18th murder victim. Miraculously, Tracy escaped the Milwaukee cannibal killer's vile clutches. It's amazing. You know, your story is so amazing. First of all, before we get really deeply into it, how did you meet Jeffrey Dahmer?
Okay, I've seen him around in the neighborhood before. On several occasions, he spoke with me and my friends. Seemed like a normal, everyday guy,
So this normal, everyday guy, how did he manage to lure you to the apartment? I mean, how did he get you to go someplace with him?
Well, first of all, we were at the mall, me and my friends just hanging out, It was after work. Yep, and then he was in the mall at that time, too. He approached us, asked us what we was doing. He said he was just down from Chicago visiting a sick relative,
So he lied about where he was from?
Yeah, right. And then he said people in Milwaukee are not so friendly, which is true. Yep, and then being back just new to the city 6 weeks before then, I could relate to what he was saying, and then he said, I got some money, we can go buy beer and get girls, go down by the lake,
Did he flash any bills?
Yeah, he had a couple $100 or more, He said he had sponsored a beer and everything. I said, I guess it's okay,
So he was going to be like the big daddy and show you a good time?
Yeah, right.
To hustle some chicks?
Right.
We've all heard about the atrocities committed by this man, by Jeffrey Dahmer, Milwaukee's serial killer who mutilated and dismembered 11 bodies and later confessed to 6 additional murders, going back as far as 1978. And you also know what the cops found in his chamber of horrors: skulls in the freezer, decomposed hands dangling in the closet, bones stored away in cardboard boxes. We have all seen these news accounts. We've seen his smug and passionless face beaming to us from the courtroom there. But today, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time on television, you will hear Tracy's firsthand account of how Jeffrey Dahmer operated, how Jeffrey Dahmer lured this man, drugged him, held him hostage, and finally attempted to add him to his macabre body count in that apartment. Okay, so you have just told us that he's flashed the bills. He says, let's have a good time. You say it's going to be okay. What'd you do then?
Okay, then we left the mall. Me and a couple of other friends, we were all together, Then we proceeded up the street, Wisconsin Avenue. There was a liquor store there. So he said, let's go in, I'll buy the beer and some rum. He brought some rum liquor,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then where'd you go?
Okay, we came back outside, and then I saw my twin brother, which works right there on Wisconsin Avenue, And then I told him what we had planned and everything, where to go. While I was talking to my brother, Jeffrey was telling my best friends other things, that he lived in a different place totally from where he was going to be, Yep, so I didn't know, right? So I had to go up to Wisconsin Avenue where my brother lived, and Jeffrey lived in that neighborhood. Yep, so we both proceeded there. We called a cab, right?
So you and Dahmer are alone in the cab?
Right.
Then what happens?
Okay, and then I stop at my brother's house, okay? And I get out and I go try to knock on the door, but my brother's girlfriend is not there, okay?
So no one's home. What happens then?
Okay, and then Jeffrey said, well, let's come up to the apartment. We have a beer about time, everything. She might be back. We drink a beer or two,
Were you surprised that he had an apartment? He had just told you he came from Chicago.
He said he'd been there for 2 weeks, though, previous to that. So I guess so, He said he was a photographer, And I thought maybe he can afford it. He can afford it,
So you go up to his apartment?
Right.
What was the first unusual thing that struck you about the place?
The smell of the apartment. Well, not basically the apartment. As soon as you open the hall door, enter in the building, it had just like a smell, this tasteful smell, Yep, and then I asked him what it was. He said it was a sewer problem.
Is that what it smelled like? Did it smell like a sewer?
I don't really know. It stunk bad enough, So it could be plumbing or some, backup cloggage or something,
Now, what floor was the apartment on?
On the 2nd floor.
So you walk up to the apartment?
Right.
He opens the door. Okay. How many locks on the door?
He had about 8 locks on the front door.
Okay, so you go in. Do you immediately see things that strike you as extraordinary?
Not basically, yeah. And he had a camera out there. He said it was for security purposes, and all the locks, alarms on every door, Even on the bathroom door, there was alarm. On the windows, there was alarm.
Really? Yeah. So you go inside. What happens then?
Okay. Then he offers me a beer while he said he had to go to the bedroom for a minute. He'll be back in a second. So he gave me a beer and also mixed me a rum and Coke, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just sipped a little bit and drank just a little bit of the rum and Coke, and I started feeling nauseated, you know. It was real funny. I said, well, I'm not going to drink any more of this, so I sat it down for a while, you know. Then he came in and said, you feeling pretty good yet, you know? And I thought, so I said, it's okay, you know. And then I just sipped the beer, you know.
Okay. I want you to lay out the scene now in the apartment. What's this place look like? What's unusual about what you're looking at?
No, it was neurotic acid boxes in the front. He said he cleaned it concrete with us. That was the only thing unusual in the front living room, you know. A lot of different boxes, you know.
With acid in them?
Yeah, and contained body parts also, but that at the time...
But you didn't know that?
I didn't know that at the time.
Okay, so there's boxes with acid in it, okay. What about his decorations in the apartment?
Well, he said he was an athlete at Vic Tanny's, so he had some guys up there, you know, lifting weights or what have you.
Some pictures of naked men?
No, they wasn't nude in the front, only, you know, just from here up, you know, just like athletes, you know. So
nothing unusual about these photographs?
No, not really. I've seen them before, you know.
Okay. Did you think he was gay at that point?
No, he never presumed that to us at any point.
So he never came on to you?
No, he didn't even act like it. In that neighborhood, I couldn't suspect, you know, a gay guy being there.
Okay, well, if he wasn't gay, was he just being your friend, Tracy?
Yeah. Right.
Just being a buddy?
Yep.
All right, so he goes into the other room, he comes out, checks on the progress, obviously, of the Mickey that he slipped you. Right. You hadn't drunk too much of it by then.
Yeah. Right.
So what else are you seeing then? What does he make you do then?
Okay. After first we were just like talking about the fish tank. It was to the right. He was like sitting the way you were on the sofa, and I was at this end. And I was leaning over like this. And then before I knew it, he had threw a handcuff on me and pulled about a 12-inch machete-like knife and put it to my heart and my armpit, you know. He told me how skilled he was and that he could kill me at any moment if I wouldn't do what he said, you know.
Did he tell you why he was doing that?
Not at that point, you know, not at that time.
Okay, well, take us through this evening of horrors. You're obviously terrified now. You've got a knife stuck in your ribs. You got a madman, got a handcuff on you. What do you do?
And then he said, oh, at that time, he said, I just want to take pictures of you, you know, and stuff like that. And then he said, I want you to go in the refrigerator and get another beer. So therefore, he stood me up with the handcuff, with the loose one on my hand. He grabbed that, and he still had the knife at me, and he guided me towards the refrigerator. I opened the refrigerator there, and there the skulls was, and a heart, and a hand. And he said, that's beautiful, isn't it, you know?
What do you do? Okay. And how do you react to that? It's so far beyond the pale of normal experience. I mean, how do you react looking at skulls and hands and body parts?
At that point, I couldn't really do anything. I was like this stuck. You know, he told me how great mine would be.
How great your skull would be?
Yeah. How beautiful I was. Then he started, you know, getting really like, if you want to call it homosexual or freaky or whatever, start telling me how pretty I was and all this, you know.
But was he admiring you in a sexual way, or was he admiring you the way a hunter looks at his game? You know, another head, literally, to hang on, as a trophy on his wall. Or in his refrigerator in this case.
At that point, yeah, really. He was telling me that, and then he proceeded to tell me to go to the bedroom. He leaded me into the bedroom area. And he makes me sit on a sofa. Yeah. And then as I walked in there, I saw the bone, a skeleton, some type of bone. I didn't know if it came from an arm or a leg in a closet, you know.
Did you know immediately that what you had seen in the refrigerator were human remains?
At that point, I was so in shock, I couldn't really tell, and I wasn't sure. But it looked real, too real not to be anything but the real thing, you know. Yeah.
Well, before you tell us what happened in the bedroom, why don't you take a break? We'll take a break, and we'll continue an incredible discussion. You should know, ladies and gentlemen, we'll also be meeting others whose lives were brutally touched by this monster, Jeffrey Dahmer. It is an incredible story. It is the diary today of a monster. That's the focus of this edition of Geraldo. We'll be right back.
Evening. We'll have another update in about an hour and more in the news at 5 and 6.
I'm in my house. I've been in his house. I would have thought that it was just what he said. You know, my meat in my freezer went out. And so that's what the smell is.
That smell, that awful smell emanating from Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment in Milwaukee. Not until much later did people realize the source of that killing odor, the carcasses of 11 of this madman's victims, or what was left of them after he finished his macabre snacking. With me now, a worldwide television exclusive interview, Tracy Edwards, the man who was doomed to become Jeffrey Dahmer's 18th victim. Before the commercial break, Tracy had taken us through his meeting with Dahmer, his initial encounter in the front rooms of Dahmer's chamber of horrors. Now Dahmer has taken you into the bedroom. You have a handcuff on your left hand. He's got the machete, the 12-inch knife in his other hand sticking into your ribs. What does he do?
Okay. Then he shows me some pictures. He said, I want to show you something. You could look better than these pictures. You know, you're the star one so far, he told me.
And so, the pictures were?
Of mutilated bodies, people handcuffed, you know, like he had been eating on them or something like that, you know. I couldn't really tell, but it just looked like they had portions taken out of their body, you know. It's all over.
You know, you mentioned being partially drugged. You also mentioned being absolutely stunned and in shock, but I wonder right now, the fear must have been passing through you like nausea. I mean, describe it for us.
Well, I got to a point where I was so fearful, you know, that I just asked my God, why am I here, you know? Why should, then it seemed like that someone came over me, channeled me, you know, and everything I said to this person was like really him, you know, directing me, telling me what to do and how to act with this person, you know. And then I just start talking to him, reasoning with him, you know, because he was telling me things like, you'll never leave me, okay? You'll be a permanent part of me. Yeah, once I eat your heart, you know, you'll never leave me, you know.
He threatened to eat your heart.
Yeah, he told me he would.
And he meant it literally.
Yes.
All right, he shows you the pictures of the other victims, the mutilated, partially consumed bodies of the other victims. What happens then, Tracy?
Okay, then he tells me to lay on the floor face down, okay? But for some reason, I just couldn't let him do that, you know? He just handcuffed me. So I kind of laid on my side, like, right? And then he lays across me and asks me to let him listen to my heartbeat or whatever. So he puts his head on me, you know? And then I knew then that he was going to really start going off. I had to think of something, so I told him I had to use the restroom. Okay, so he takes the knife, like, sticks it in my back and walks me to the bathroom and watch me use the restroom, you know. And then he proceeds, after that, we go back to the bedroom and I'm talking with him, you know, telling him that I was a friend, you know, that I'm not here to hurt him or anything like that. I knew at that point I had to take some type of charge to let him know that I was sincere, you know. Yeah, so I kind of unbuttoned my shirt for him and everything to let him realize that, feel comfortable. And all the time I was thinking about jumping out the window or would I go through the door or whatever, you know, because it was a life and death. I knew then the smell and everything was death, you know. Yeah, and then he tells me to go to this barrel-like thing where he has this different body parts. Like,
What'd you see?
I saw cut off of penises, things of this nature, hearts, hands, and things like that. Yep, and he's watching The Exorcist tape is playing, and he's
The Exorcist?
Right.
He's playing The Exorcist tape?
Yep, he told me this was the best movie out, you know, enjoying that. And he told me I should view it for a moment, and then he opens the file cabinet drawer that's right on the side of the bed with one hand and keeps the knife up under my heart with the other one, and it's the skeleton head in the cabinet, and he goes rubbing on it, you know. And then he'll look at the movie for a moment. Yep.
Oh, my God.
And then he made me lay back on the floor. He's just looking at me. He put the knife up under my groin area, you know. And then it's like he's just sizing me up or what have you, you know, looking at different parts of my chest, things like that. Yeah, and he said, you're gonna be this beautiful for me, you know.
It's like a real-life Silence of the Lambs, this
Yeah.
thing. It's unbelievable. So how'd you get out of there?
Okay. Then when he was doing that, I said, I'm drinking too much beer. I knew I had to get up again. I said, well, let's go to the bathroom again. And I had talked to him and everything, you know, and he felt more easier with me. Yeah, but then he told me at a point, though, that either I would have to kill him or he would kill me, you know. Yeah, but it got to that point. I said, well, I'll take your pictures or what have you. I'll let you handcuff me. But first, let me go to the bathroom and get another beer. Okay, so he kind of guides me in there and leave me there this time with the door closed. And he's standing in the hallway like, yeah, so I walked there and then I said, give me a beer, okay? And so he kind of guides me over there. And then he had an air conditioner in the front living room, which the back room was really hot. I said, well, let's sit up here for a moment and get a breath of fresh air because it's really hot. Then I go and pose for you or what have you. So we sit on the sofa again, right? And he's sitting there in like a transcendent state, like rocking like some type of ritual or what have you, okay? And so at that point, I was contemplating then. I said, well, I'm gonna have to do something now. Either he's gonna kill me anyway, so I might as well at least die trying, okay? At least get out trying or whatever, because I wasn't gonna stand there. So he was just sitting there like I wasn't even there no more, in a transcendent state, just rocking and nodding, you know, and stuff like that. And then I said, well, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, and he didn't respond right at that moment, okay? So I stood up, right? And I hit him in the head, like he was sitting just the same exact place as you are. And he had his head like turned more to the side, like. So I hit him right here. Okay, so I hit him right here. And his head turned over, and as I was getting up, I kicked him in the face, because I guess he didn't know I had martial arts experience too. Yeah, from my brother and my father, which, you know, and everything like that. And then I ran towards the door. And I was trying, I guess God was with me because I didn't even know which lock to turn.
Which of those 8 locks?
Locks, and I had put my hand on the right lock.
Only one was locked?
That one, he had that one locked and one deadbolt lock, but you had your choice. And I made the right choice, so God had to be with me. As I was turning the door, I saw him swinging a blade at me, right about my head area. So I ducked and I spun and I hit him in the groin area. And then he kind of just like, it was like a glancing blow. It really didn't hurt him all that much. So he got up as I was turning the knobs to reach and grab my arm again, you know, and then I had to hit him again. And it just like, sit back and come back, you know, and told me that, you know. After he started grabbing me as I was going out the door.
You pull yourself away.
Right.
You run down one flight of stairs.
Right.
You're in the streets.
Right.
You run into a cop car right away?
Yeah, as soon as I get out. First, when I was running through the hall, I guess the people heard the struggle in the building. They asked me what was going on. I was so much in shock, I couldn't say anything. I just kept running until I saw the cops. It was like a half a block as I got outside. Yeah. Yep, and the cops was there then.
And what'd you say? Okay. Who said what to who? You know, whom?
Okay, I stopped the cops. I came up to them. But should I have my attorney up here since cases is pending?
Just introduce yourself.
Yes, this is S.A. Salat. I'm the attorney representing Mr. Tracy Edwards in this action against the city of Milwaukee. At that point in time, when Tracy ran down the stairs, the officers were parked on the street. He sought their help. They denied him that help. They forced Mr. Edwards to walk back up to the apartment after ridiculing him, asking him, who did you know? Which one of us did you escape from? Because he had a handcuff on. What are you, some type of homosexual in this area? He said, no, my life was just about to be taken upstairs. They said, well, go up there and tell him to take the handcuffs off. He walks upstairs by himself, no assistance from the Milwaukee Police Department, knocks on the door. Dahmer's opened the door and said, come in. I'll take the handcuffs off. Mr. Edwards, in fear again, runs back downstairs, tells the officer he won't take the handcuffs off. He wants me to come back in. I cannot go back in there. He would kill me. And at that time, there's only one officer come upstairs to seek to give him some assistance, and you can take him back inside the apartment. What happened?
All right, as we go back inside, right, me and one officer, the other one was coming through there. So I sit and he asks Dahmer, was he some type of freak or something, you know? Dahmer agreed with this man. He said he was. I guess he thought I was If it's just a homosexual thing or something like that, they'll just forget about it or whatever. He was all cool and calm. Yep. And then the other officer comes upstairs, and they asked him where the key is. He told them it's in the bedroom or something, you know? Yeah. But he didn't want the officers to go in there. One was trying to go in. He went in the bedroom, and Dahmer got real violent and aggressive, you know? He turned back into the person I was telling them about, because at first the cops would not let me talk. They was telling me to shut up, you know? Simple as that. I couldn't say anything, you know, until that point. And the officer one went in there, and the other one had to just grab Dahmer and throw him on the floor. And the other guy came out with pictures, you know, of the mutilated bodies. Yeah. And then they believed me. I told them where one knife was, because I had managed to slip one knife away from this guy. He had knives like strapped in all different areas of his body, you know. And I didn't know if he had a gun or not. I didn't know when to make the right move or anything of that nature.
Did the cops check out the refrigerator? Or
no, yeah, one officer opened the refrigerator and he threw up. He threw up. And I'm surprised I didn't throw up. Yeah. It's just like God was with me. I didn't have time for panicking. I was so fearful then.
You're a lucky man.
Really.
The conduct of the Milwaukee Police Department in this case, as you all know, is under intense scrutiny right now. Was it the fact that they thought this was a gay thing that made them so disinterested? Was it because most of the victims were minority people? What was it that caused them to essentially downplay or ignore these cries for help? All that will be litigated and in court and in public hearings in the months and weeks to come. Our story, though, is not that story. Our story is the human aspect of this, and coming up, you'll meet more people whose lives were touched by Jeffrey Dahmer. Stay with us, please. Diary of a Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, our sole focus today.
Mr. Edwards, why did you go back upstairs? I would have wanted to get arrested by those police. I would have done anything to stop from having to go back to that apartment.
Well, really, I tried my best to obey laws, you know. So they suggested it to me at that time. I was in such shock. I just done what they told me without even thinking, you know. Well, they say, go ask the guy to take it off of you. So I went upstairs to do such, you know. Really.
So you went back. That is... I agree with the young lady. I think that's one of the most incredible parts of the entire story, that you would be forced, after escaping and realizing what it is that you were escaping from, be forced to go back into that same, into harm's way one more time. I want to play right now. You know, we have this 1-900-SPEAK-UP number. You just saw it during that last commercial break. We have thousands of people calling in every week with ideas for stories and with personal testimonials. I want to play a call right now that came from a lady named Keely Favors Watkins. Here it is.
Geraldo, my name is Keely Favors. I had called you asking for help in finding my cousin who was missing in Milwaukee. Now he's one of the victims in the Milwaukee murder cases. Please call us. We have a story to tell. Thank you.
And here is Keely Favors Watkins right now. She is the cousin of Errol Lindsay, one of Jeffrey Dahmer's 17 victims. She called our 900 number this past summer, first looking for help when Errol was missing, and later to inform us, as you just heard, that he had been murdered by this monster. Sitting alongside her is Errol's mom. This is Mildred Lindsay. She last saw Errol on April 7th of 1991. As she went off to church, he went to get a key made 2 blocks from Dahmer's apartment. That was the last Mildred saw of her son, Errol. Sitting next to Mildred is Pat Snyder. Pat Snyder is a family friend of the Dahmers from Akron, Ohio. She has known this family for years. Now, she also called our 900 number to shed some light on Jeff Dahmer's background. She also has a very interesting tale to tell. And the man who is behind the screen to protect his anonymity, we will call him, for purposes of this broadcast, Nick. Nick says that he actually met Jeff in a bar in 1985. He and Jeff Dahmer, he tells us, ended up living together for a few months. So that is a unique perspective in this, I think, very gripping broadcast. Next, an old friend of ours, Jack Levin. Jack is an expert in this whole field of murder. He is a professor of sociology at Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts. He is the co-author of Mass Murder, a new paperback. The paperback version, rather, is just out. Jack is here to, if possible, put this guy in some kind of perspective. But I want to go first to you, Mom, to Mildred, and ask, you know, it's a terrible, terrible tragedy whenever a child is lost. And when a child is the victim of violent crime and murder, it's a horrifying thing. But it would seem to me that it would be even worse given the horrific nature of the crime in Errol's case, in the case of all 17 victims. How did you respond upon finding that this man was not merely a murderer, but a monster?
I just can't understand what really happened. How did he meet Earl? Because Earl, he wasn't the type that talked to just anybody. And he didn't go nowhere. He went to work and back home. But this was just on a Sunday evening, 6:30. Earl came downstairs and said, "Mama, I'm going to have me a door key made." So I told him, he said, "I'll see you when you get back." When I get back, so I said, "Earl, I'll probably be at church when you come back." He said, "Well, Mama, I'll see you when you get back then." So he went on, and he got right to I was sitting on the back porch. Earl got to the driveway, and then finally got to the street. And it was the funniest thing. I don't know if Earl felt death or what, but he had been acting strange all that week. And he got to the sidewalk, and he looked back at me. He backed up some, and he looked at me for about 10 minutes, smiling. I said, "Earl, what are you smiling about?" He just looked at me, and finally he just went on.
Kylie, when you called and said you had a tale to tell, can you tell us the headline of that story? What is it that most outrages you?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say that I've watched my aunt and my cousins, her other 5 children, go through a very traumatic, thing right now with our family. And right now, most of the family feels remorse for Jeffrey Dahmer, except for me, because I cannot get past being mad at the system first. Jeffrey Dahmer was not allowed to do anything that the police and the judicial system, as far as I'm concerned, did not allow him to do. My aunt called me, I live in Dayton, and she called my mom and myself in Dayton on maybe about April the 10th, after he had been missing for 3 days. And she was upset, and she was crying, and she wanted to be sure that before she called any family members that something was actually wrong. And immediately upon her calling us, we knew right away that we felt in our hearts that Earl was dead, because this was something, like she said, he did not do. He was a mama's boy, and he wouldn't even go to a friend's house without calling back home just to check to see what mom was doing. So we knew something was wrong. No one had seen him. He hadn't called home.
And what did the response? What was your response?
I arrived in Milwaukee April 12th, and upon my arrival there, my aunt had already filed a missing persons complaint at the police department. The police department told my aunt that Errol was 19 years old, and he was grown, and he could come and go as he pleases, and they were not going to look for him.
Jeffrey Dahmer, The Diary of a Monster, a man who obviously used the system to get his clutches on 17 innocent victims, almost 18, including Tracy. We'll be right back. Diary of a Monster.
Hi, I would like to know what period of time these murders were committed, when they started, and when was the last one?
Well, he started shortly after graduating high school in 1978 in Ohio. That's actually where, Pat, you knew the family. You still know the family, yes, although you have left them.
I spoke to Sherry last week.
Sherry Dahmer.
Sherry Dahmer is Jeffrey's stepmother.
Stepmom. So he started shortly after high school. You know, before we get too far, either Mildred or Kylie, do either of you know really how Dahmer killed Errol?
You want me to? We got the police transcripts with his confessions to the killings of 15 of the 17 boys. He said that, well, after I got to Milwaukee, we talked to the man at the key shop where Earl went, and he told us that he had seen Earl, but he acted like he was in a hurry to leave. And so according to the transcript, the story really all fits together because Dahmer said that he met Errol outside of the key shop and offered him, asked him would he be interested in doing some odd jobs for him for $50. Earl then went into the key shop and had the key made quickly, as the key shop man said, and came back out, and Jeffrey Dahmer told him to come to his apartment with him. He'd give him more details about it. So when he went into the apartment, he said he gave Earl a beer, which he had slipped a Mickey in or whatever he used, and Earl took one sip and was knocked out instantly. After he was knocked out, he strangled him, and after he died, he had oral sex with him, and then he dismembered his body.
How did they know it was him?
How did they know it was Earl?
Earl, yeah.
The dental records identified his skull, and fingerprints identified the hands.
So Tracy probably saw Earl's mortal remains. Tracy, do you feel a sense of bonding with this family, with these victims?
Yep. Everyone that's up here, really, yeah. Period.
If this had been going on for quite some time, him living in a multiple dwelling, didn't anybody report the smell and the odor? And I'm sure there must have been a lot of noise over a period of time.
The odor, it was reported that they had been smelling a stench in the air at those apartments for over a year. And they said that one of the neighbors who I talked to said that they reported this to the police, and the police didn't come out and investigate it. The neighbors were complaining, saying that it smelled like a dead animal or something. And they also reported saying that they heard sawing and screaming at all times of the night. So I really couldn't tell you what was on the tenant's mind. I blame them as well.
I want to get to Jack to give us some sense of sanity to this insane act. First, let me just ask Nick, 31 years old. Is it fair to say, Nick, that you were Jeffrey Dahmer's former lover?
Geraldo, at the time that I met him, it was not as so-called lovers, but more off as a relationship, semi-regular.
How long did it last, Nick?
It began in the end of June, beginning of July in 1985 for approximately 2 months, 2.5 months.
When was his first killing in Milwaukee?
To my knowledge?
Yes.
I don't have one.
I think it was shortly after you two broke up.
That's what everything has been leading to point to.
Is your ex-lover someone you recognize in these tales of grisly horror?
Geraldo, no. I can't go against what has been proven and said, but at the time that I knew Jeff Dahmer, it would have been, to this day, I can't fathom it being true, although I'm sure it is. but the time that I knew him, it's a total opposite personality.
You were even in his grandma's house, weren't you?
That's where I first met Jeff.
Were you in the basement where he allegedly killed 3 people?
Yes, Geraldo, I was.
Anything? You see any chemistry sets there? Any acid?
No, in my discussions of this, there was no indications to the effect of anything that would lead me to give me a flag for personal safety or even concern.
Well, let me ask you right now, Nick, how you feel about not being victim, I don't know how many he'd killed in Ohio, I forget, but one of his victims, one of his early victims. Do you feel lucky?
Well, after hearing Tracy's story, I consider myself damn lucky.
Damn lucky is right. That's probably the classic understatement for this season. Got to take a break. We'll talk to Pat, who knew the family when, still does. Jack Levin, to put it in perspective. More with our worldwide television exclusive with Tracy Edwards. Stay with us. I want to ask Pat Snyder right away, the friend of the family. How long have you known the Dahmers, Pat?
Well, I've known Sherry a minimum of 20 years when I moved from West Virginia to Ohio to go to Kent State. And that's where I met, not at Kent, I didn't meet Sherry at Kent State, but I met her while I was in Kent working.
Was this a dysfunctional family in your experience?
I wouldn't even call it a family. To me, I feel guilt, and I've really struggled with it. I went into a crying spasm till my husband had to take me to a doctor's just a few nights ago, because in retrospect, I saw this coming, and I'd stop it. Something wonderful happens to a woman when she becomes a mother. Women who are not mothers can also be wonderful, but mothers are special. Through no fault of her own, Sherry Jordan never was able to have children. So when she told me she was going to marry Lionel, I said, Sherry, here's your chance. You don't have to be pregnant. You don't have to do anything. You got 2 handsome sons. You can have that family now. But she called them her nemesis. And never once when we were at lunch or when we were out with the girls shopping, all the rest of us talking about our families, never once did she ever mention the children other than to say she definitely despised David. She called him her nemesis, and she said Jeff was just no damn good. Those are her words. And Lionel has his PhD in chemistry. And it's the same old story. College boy meets girl, and girl puts boy through school, and when boy gets PhD, boy dumps wife and gets new wife. Well, only the law took a dim view of that, and Lionel had to pay for his ex-wife's education and also child support for David. And that just killed Sherry. She just could not accept it.
Was she a wicked stepmother?
She is the epitome of a wicked stepmother.
You had a question for Nick?
Yes, I do, because there's been some conflict, Nick. I don't want to pry into your affairs too much, but this is really bothering me. When this story first broke in the papers, I still have family in Ohio, and I've kept up with this very closely, that Jeffrey had been molested when he was 8 years old by a neighbor, and that once when he was with you, he got drunk and told you that indeed it was his father and not a neighbor who molested him.
Is that true, Nick?
Yes, it is.
Jeffrey Dahmer told you that his father molested him?
In the course of our relationship, I guess, I was inquisitive into the background of his life because he had no family. He did, but he did not claim any. He had a lot of hate and nothing good to say about it. And there was a time I asked, what was your first sexual experience, basically, to find a way, you know, how it developed into homosexual or heterosexual, etc. And he broke down and he told me for several years that he was abused by his father sexually.
Is his father still alive?
His father's still alive.
All right, then I've got to say this. I've got to say his father's not here to defend himself. We're hearing one side of the story. We make no statement as to the veracity of the charge, the horrible charge you just heard. But I'm sure that Jack can factor that into his analysis, which comes next. I've got to take a break. I'm sorry.